This is the GI Microcast. I'm Editor-in-Chief James Batchelor. I'm joined by my boss, Chris Dring. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really well, James. Well, I'm delighted you're back, because James has been off since Gamescom. I've not seen him since our time in Cologne, cavorting around. Disneyland, is that it?
Yeah, Disneyland Paris. It was glorious. I tell you what, as knackering as Gamescom is, you try taking a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old around Disneyland Paris.
I'll pass. Yeah, but I'm all right. I've also been playing Pikmin 4, which I'm going to say this. I think that's the best game Nintendo released last year, which is a controversial statement when you consider they released Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Wonder, which are exceptional. But I can't stop playing it. Like I'm compelled. I think it's brilliant. It's a good 40 hours long as well. It's really chunky. I think it's incredible, and I love the fact that Nintendo. I mean, it helps. This is a Miyamoto baby of a game, right? So, I think he's advocated for this series to continue. But Nintendo have gone for this, right? They keep investing in it. There's been spin-offs. There's been 4 games now. They've even Pikmin characters have turned up in their theme parks, and I think it's starting to pay off. But they're playing the long game with this series, and I think Pikmin 4 is masterful. It's wonderful, and I'm enjoying that. That's been my week.
Pikmin 5 for Switch 2 confirmed, yes?
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't know how it's one of the, quite a lot of Nintendo Switch games. I play them, I go, this is the ultimate version of this type of game.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure, you can't just give us more. Like in Pikmin 4, there's so many new ideas and so many new concepts in it that while I'm playing it, I'm like, could you not have saved a few of these for the next one? It's like Super Smash Brothers Ultimate with all those characters. Like, don't you want to save a few for the next Smash Brothers? You're making your life hard for yourself down the line. You really are. But yeah, great game. Playing that.
Good stuff. Well, glad you're enjoying that. I've been playing nothing because I've been in Disneyland, so I'm looking forward to getting back into some gaming now I'm back. But more than that, I'm looking forward to talking about the biggest news from the past week with you.
Yeah.
Before we dive into our main topic, there was one story I did want to touch on briefly. I saw that I've been frantically catching up over this morning. I saw that the new deal between Remedy and Annapurna. So Annapurna is now going to finance 50% of Control 2. Annapurna's secured the movie and TV rights for both Control and Alan Wake. This is all part of. So it's just a financing deal. Alan's not publishing anything. Remedy is self-publishing.
Alan is a writer, James. As
Alan is a
writer.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. He's a writer, not a publisher. Very, very unprofessional start to this podcast. We will get back on track. No, so this is part of Remedy shifting towards self-publishing its own games. They already kind of bought the publishing rights back for Control earlier this year. We actually had Thomas Puar from Remedy on to discuss that, and this kind of ties into a conversation we've had previously. Alan Wake 2 was co-financed and published by Epic Games.
Financed, I think.
Financed entirely and published by Epic Games, and it still isn't recouping costs. We was talking about how it's not sold quite well enough to get royalties. It's still got some. I was going to say, it's still got some beats coming in terms of, we had one DLC released earlier this year. We've got more DLC coming up. Certainly there's fans, particularly one on the GI team, that are itching, rooting for this game.
And Control had its best ever year in its second year.
Yeah.
So you do, it's. I think they would have hoped for it to have sold faster than it has, but it was still the fastest selling Remedy game, and it's a long game. Steam's a long game. They're not on Steam. That makes it a little bit difficult. So it's not made it yet, but certainly it wasn't the fact the game came out 6 months ago and it's still in the not profitable stage is disappointing.
It was October.
It's
11 months ago, and it's still not recouping costs. That's not a great deal. And I wonder, and I don't think we'll ever get the answer to this. I wonder if Remedy pushing towards self-publishing is partly we've seen a lot of companies over the years want to take control of their own destiny, as it were, and handle their products themselves. I also wonder if it's just Epic may not have been enthused about publishing anything else.
I've got a different view. I think people like working with Remedy, right? And I don't think there's any shortage of people wanting to give them money. They are a very high quality developer, and although their IP may not be necessarily delivering returns, they're still really successful, multi-million sellers. I think Control's made over $100 million or something like that. It's been So it's been a hit, that game. I think the move towards self-publishing makes sense for them on certain titles. I think if you've got Alan Wake and Control, where you control the full financial element of it. Obviously, you can't. Control 2's a AAA game. I don't think Remedy's got it in their money in their back pocket to just fund that entirely themselves. They needed money from someone, and they've taken money from someone in a deal that means they still get to publish it. It's still their publishing deal, and they will benefit more from it, I think. And I think it's just it's truth to the fact that I think one of the problems of Alan Wake 2, and it's both the reason why it exists. So it's a bit of a weird thing to say. The problem of Alan Wake 2 is it's not on Steam. Right, it's on the Epic. It's on the Epic Game Store. So that's impacted its sales. It wasn't a physical release either, and which won't be the biggest element of their sales, but certainly turn some people off. We might be looking at a profitable game by now if those two things had happened. But of course, the game wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for Epic. So it's like it is what it is. But I think it's an interesting move. They're not publishing all of their games, right? Let's be clear here. There will be big projects that come their way that other publishers want them to work on that they will invest in. Most notably, of course, is the Max Payne, which is handled by Rockstar and Take-Two, that they're working on. I think Condor, they're going to be publishing themselves. Control 2, it sounds like they're publishing themselves. And that's, and that is interesting. But Annapurna's a good partner, by the way. If you look at Remedy and Annapurna, what a great mix of of partnerships.
Really interesting deal for Annapurna as well, because so far they've only focused on indie games, certainly like smaller games. They've not done something on a AAA scale, and I think you're right. Like, it's a really good match for them. Like the style, the tone. Remedy's games have always been very cinematic. I was kind of pleased to see the TV and movie rights included in the deal, because Control and Alan Wake definitely lend themselves to a good adaptation. We've seen so many good adaptations. Borderlands movie aside, we've seen so many good adaptations in the last few years. I can see Alan Wake and Control joining that. Remedy have got these sort of ambitions. We saw that with Quantum Break, the fact they produced a kind of a 4-part TV series as part of the game. Like, it does make sense. It's a really smart partnership.
Yeah, and I think it's worth remembering that Annapurna isn't just... you're talking about Annapurna Interactive there, but actually they are... Obviously, this is an element... This is the broader Annapurna that's done this deal. So, and they are, of course, Zero Dark 30 and Hustlers and all of that kind of... those sort of award-winning films, American Hustle, that kind of thing. So they're not yes, Alan Wake's not exactly they're not troubling the Marvel movies, but they make high quality, decent, well budgeted, well supported films, and it feels like the right fit for and it allows Remedy to indulge that Lynchian side of them, which they love to do.
Absolutely. Main story we wanted to talk about this week was Concord. Concord is the new free-to-play shooter. Not free-to-play, sorry. Concord is the new hero shooter from PlayStation. It released last month. It's part of their big live services push, and news has come out over the last few weeks that it's not doing particularly well. We've seen estimates that it has sold 10,000 copies on Steam, 15,000 copies on PlayStation. These are analyst estimates.
Simon Carlos's estimates. Surprisingly, by the way, I've seen some sales figures. Surprisingly close. Not quite. I mean, it's a little bit more on PlayStation, a little bit less on PC, I think. But it is surprisingly so.
Estimates in air quotes, then.
Yeah. Well, it's around that number, right? That number seems about right.
But that number is not good for a first-party live service game. That number is low, and as a lot of people have been doing in the last few years, there's been a lot of talk about the concurrent users. I'm just for fun, as we speak right now, for fun, using SteamDB. Most people tend to go to SteamDB for concurrent users. Apparently there are 39 people playing Concord as we play, like within less than a week or so of launch. That is not good.
It is a European time zone, I want to pull it out, and it's done worse in Europe than it has done in North America.
Fair enough. I'll log on later and see how well it's done.
But regardless, it's we're talking. I could probably sell more copies of a game if I went to the local car boot, and it's definitely it's a flop.
This is the point. Yeah, it's a flop. The conversation is around why Concord has failed, and it's interesting. Like we have this conversation around live service games a lot. Like there's the market is so oversaturated with hero shooters. I'll be honest. I remember seeing the reveal. It was this year that it was revealed. Like the state of play just ahead of not E3, wasn't it? And I remember watching it. It's like don't see anything here that makes it stand out from the market.
These games are commissioned during a period of time where everyone thought these games were the future, right? It's the classic games industry chasing the trend issue.
Yeah.
Sony, not the only ones to do it, but we're talking about Sony here, went through a period earlier this year where they took an axe to all of the games where they went, like, the differentiation isn't here, this isn't new enough, this competition's too high, you're not going to do very well with this. And they went in and they cut cut London Studio, which is heartbreaking, and they killed a load of projects. Why didn't they kill Concord? That's the question. I think because it was nearly done. Now, Sega killed Hyenas, and wasn't that nearly done? Yeah, but it is actually more expensive for Sega to release a game than it is for Sony. Right? Okay, it's on Steam, but Sony have to pay store fees to themselves. They don't have to. And also, they've got a lot of owned marketing channels that they can push the game through. And I think there was just a question, like, with our own marketing channels, with our own, is it worth, is it going to cost us more to release the game or not release the game? And they clearly decided it was going to cost them more to not release the game. I don't know if that's true, right? But I don't think anyone internally at PlayStation or anywhere is surprised, by these numbers. I don't think. Here's the thing: Summer Games Fest back in June, Sony had a presence, right? That you could go, at the physical presence, you go and play their games. And before the event, they announced that they had 2 undisclosed games you could play. Oh, I'll sign up. I'll see what these 2 Sony games are. One of them became quite clear. It was Astro Bot. Okay, great. I thought it would be. Wonderful. Looking forward to Astro Bot. And then quite late on, it was during the sort of opening the Summer Games Fest live show. It became, and the other one's Lego Horizon. My assumption was that was going to be Concord. I thought I was looking at Astro Bot and Concord, but we're looking at Astro Bot and Lego Horizon. Now, obviously, there could be many reasons why Concord wasn't given the presence there for people to play it. Maybe the game wasn't ready, maybe the code wasn't there. There's loads of reasons. There's no reason to jump to a conclusion, but that's that niggling bit at the back of my mind that wondered, do Sony care about this one? And I don't think they did. I think they might have done at one point when they commissioned it. When they, this is a game from a studio they actually acquired only a few years ago. But my thinking with this is that, look, this is speculation. I haven't spoken to anybody. If they sent this out to die, and they just thought that it was probably cheaper. I mean, they could have done a Batgirl. They could have done a Hyenas. They could have done a Fable Legends and had an almost finished game and just not released it. But I don't. They obviously didn't go down that route this time. Which probably saved this conversation. But hey, look, it's not done well. I don't think anyone's surprised. I think perhaps probably the people most disappointed are the people that have spent a lot of time working on it, to be honest. That's the sympathy lies. Sony's focus, I think, is elsewhere at the moment.
My concern is what happens to those people. Like, we're in an ongoing period of consolidation here. We're seeing people laid off. Other titles have come out earlier this year, and then either been layoffs or a studio closure within a couple of months of it being clear that this hasn't taken off. A live service game, like the studio will be set up to continue producing content and so forth. It'll be set up for ongoing development, and will they need that ongoing? So
they have already made cuts. The studio, they did it earlier in the year. Right. It depends on what they're working on next, right? That's the thing, is that they don't cut the studio based on. Some people cut the studio if what happened before, but reality is like if the team are working on something new and different, and if they knew this game was not going to do very well and immediately shifted the team onto another project, it's all about what the investment they're making now will be in. Going into it, if there isn't a concept, if they were banking everything on Concord and they don't have anything, and Concord 2's been canned, then you're in trouble. But this game, that the leadership team, the creative directors of those teams will probably have moved on to whatever their next project is, and hopefully it's something that would be in keeping with what PlayStation's current strategy is, rather than the live service push that they have. They're still doing live service games. Obviously, they're just not. They're not banking on 15. They looked at their projects and gone, right, okay, these aren't probably going to make it. So it depends on what they're doing. In terms of what they've got next. If they were banking everything on Concord, but I mean, looking at the launch, looking at the promotion behind it, I think there's been internally they'd have known for some time that this wasn't one that was going to hit.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm intrigued about Sony's live service strategy going forward, or Sony's strategy overall going forward. But certainly the live service one, as you know, we talked before. Like there was one point where they said they had 12 live service games in the works. That was cut down to 6. We've already seen that. This one was kind of, as you suggest. I think you're right. This one has been sent out to die. I'm intrigued about like the remaining ones that made the cut. I can't wait to see what they are and work out like why. Were the others like just too far gone to cancel, like this one might have been?
No, I don't think they're not abandoned live service. They know this is a direction the industry's going in, and as a major platform holder, it's kind of important that you do have, you have that sort of push. Microsoft's pushing into subscription with its form of a current consumer revenue, and Sony sort of pushing into live service. It just needs to be, when you're in a market where it's this competitive, you've got to put bets on stuff. The idea of let's put out 14, 15 games and sort of co-cave support some of them and see what happens isn't going to cut it when you're up against this massive. You can get lucky. You can get a Helldivers 2, right? It can happen, and it has happened to Sony. Right? Yeah. But
so this is the daft thing. It's amazing to see Concord do so badly when it's barely 6 months after the success of Helldivers.
Helldivers 2 is different, right? It's a different type of game. It's a different concept. It appealed differently. And look, Helldivers 2 has also dropped away. I think it's at a level it's doing fine. I don't think anyone's worrying about it, but it isn't in the top 10 anymore. But the other stuff, I've heard good things about Jade Raymond's game. Is it Fair Games? I've heard good things about that. So there's a few. I know people are a bit skeptical about the trailer, but I've heard internal chatters very positive about it. So there are these other projects that I assume that the ones that they're focusing on are the ones that they're going to go for, right? They're going to put out there and they're going to support and try and make work work with some good big influencers and deliver the whole thing you have to do to make a live service hit. And I think focusing perhaps on 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever it is that they go, these ones that we believe are going to do something, is probably a better and smarter move than going, let's just put together 12, let's put out 15 and see which ones land and which ones don't.
I don't envy anyone who's working on a live service game, because like the market leaders in that space, particularly on consoles and PC, have been so established, have got such large audiences and are used as social platforms for it's very much kind of the I was reading one analyst's comments about how live service games, their success depends on not just getting players in, but getting players' friends to come in, because players will go where their friends are. They'll play these games together. And it's not like if you're doing like a single player AAA game that's very similar to another one, or if you're doing a AA game or whatever, like single player games in particular, like people will eventually stop playing them. If you've got an RPG that came out alongside Baldur's Gate 3 or shortly after Baldur's Gate 3, eventually someone will stop playing that and then find your game as an alternative. So down the line, you might get that. But live service games, like if people aren't playing it because their friends aren't playing, because they're all on, how do you get people to stop playing Fortnite?
The key thing is, right. So the key thing is obviously once you get people in, even if you create something, everyone goes, people have been playing Fortnite for a while. Helldivers 2 or something comes along, they go, I'm going to try that new thing. And all their friends go and try that new thing. Here's the thing. They've spent 5, 6, whatever years in Fortnite. They've built this world up and these characters up and this community up. They're coming back to Fortnite.
Yeah.
So then it's the job of these games have got this horrible task of they've convinced people to pop off, to go on holiday, go on a video game holiday to Helldivers. And now we want you to keep staying in Helldivers. And the problem with that is they want to go back home to Fortnite. Yeah. And that is the challenge that every live service game now has, because once they get them, it's how you've got to keep them. And then you see these big drop-offs happening and then sort of games sort of disappearing. What I will say, though, is games don't. You can have these sort of peaks and troughs, but also you can now make the games in Fortnite. And that's something that Des was saying, wasn't it? Like if you're an independent developer that's making a live service game, maybe make it in Fortnite, right? Yeah. So you're not asking people to leave the game to play yours. You're trying to reach the people within the game, and that sort of. The bigger players will try and do their own thing and convince people to come across, but I don't think anyone. Yeah, it's tough. It's difficult. You need to get lucky, and you need to, and then the hard work begins once after you've got lucky. But it's certainly a sort of a difficult thing. And if your game doesn't hit straight away, it's done, isn't it?
Yeah. It's why I can understand, you're right, people will return to Fortnite, etc. It's kind of why I understand why we're seeing quite a few live service games go in with a premium price option rather than launching as free to play. So Helldivers, we saw this with a lower price of $40-ish. Concord was the same sort of price point, and it on some level, that's ridiculous. That's very brave, because that's a barrier to entry. Like, people can't just try it and then see if they like it. Like, they have to invest in it up front, and that will put people off, given things like Fortnite and other ones are free to play. But equally, those who do invest and do go on that Helldivers holiday, at least you've still got their hotel fee, if we're going to labour that analogy. Yeah,
also, though, if you're a player that's spent money on a game, you're likely to, stay with it for perhaps a little longer.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. Like, the industry's really shifted towards live service, and we've seen this for years. Like I said, I'm intrigued to see future titles. I'm intrigued to we're still seeing the repercussions of these decisions when, like you say, a lot of these projects were signed at a time where everyone thought live service is definitely the future. We're kind of chasing that trend. Everyone's been chasing this since kind of the Fortnite, the Destiny sort of era, and it's.
Well, I think we've got to be careful to call live service like a genre. Right?
No, that's true.
Because it's not live service game doesn't have to be a hero shooter, right? No. We may be done with hero shooters. We may be done with card games. We may be done we were done with MOBAs, and then we're done with there comes a point where I think live service is a gameplay, is a game, is a experience type. And
that's true. Yeah.
And I think that's it's a bit like it's often when we do too many similar things that these it becomes, Helldivers 2 is a live service game. It's been a hit. It's a hit for Sony, right? So it's it doesn't have to be.
But you're right. Helldivers 2 plays very differently to a hero shooter.
Yeah.
And I would love to see. I'm intrigued by any game that is like a live service and does go like that and is doing something different. Looking at Sony, the rumored Sony games, the Horizon multiplayer they're meant to be working on. I'm intrigued.
MMO,
I'm intrigued to see how well that does, because Horizon has a very different kind of gameplay structure to other open world games and certainly other live service multiplayer games.
The live service game that I play, although I don't play it as much as I used to have much time these days, is Sea of Thieves. And of course, that's come out on PlayStation. It's done very well, apparently. Reports are over 1 million sales. Concord's looking at Sea of Thieves going, I'd love a bit of that. And that's a very different experience to a Fortnite, and so I think it just means you got to focus on what the game is rather than chase the genre trends, and which we as an industry have done historically, and then we kill genres when we don't need to, and then move on to the next one. I still want 3D platformers to come back.
I agree. Well, since we're done with hero shooters, I would love to talk about some 3D platform.
Oh, really?
Platformers. Chris, it's time to ask you, what do the numbers mean?
I don't know, James. What do the numbers mean? Last week we did some predictions. We predicted Star Wars Outlaws. I say predictions. It was a vague one. I sort of said I think it would do better than the Jedi game, but not as good as the Lego Star Wars one at launch. We don't know yet. We're recording this at the game came out last week. We haven't seen the numbers to be able to discuss what they mean. So I'm going to go back to our prediction thing, because there is another game coming out this week, and we're talking about 3D platformers, and it is Astro Bot from PlayStation. So I guess going from one, I think Astro Bot's have a very different storyline to it than the one Concord has just got. Astro Bot, for those that don't know what Astro Bot is, it is a 3D platformer in the style of the Mario series, basically. It feels and plays like a Mario game. It's used to be used, there's been a VR version of it, and it's also had the Astro Bot characters have been used in a sort of showcase PlayStation hardware. Back at the launch of the PS5, a built-in game called Astro's Playroom was released with it. You can still get it now, buy a PS5 now, and it's in there. It's a pretty short but pretty superb game. It sort of showcases the DualSense controller. It went down extremely well. When Sony closed Japan studio, they spun out the Asobi team that made it. They've made them a standalone game studio, and they've spent the last 3 years building a full sequel to Astro's Playroom, and now fully, 4 times the size sort of game called Astro Bot. It's called that. It's their first standalone mainstream release, and I think it's going to be a hit. So for starters, it was one of the top three games. So Zelda got announced quite late in the day, and Zelda jumped to the top. So in the IGN wish lists, where they track people's desire, what they got excited about over the whole sort of Summer Games Fest period, Astro Bot was announced during that period, Doom: The Dark Ages, and Zelda, and all those three are the top performing games for that period of time. Astro Bot has 50 odd million players. I mean, people have access to that game via the PlayStation. And I'm fairly convinced this is going to be, I mean, look, don't expect God of War, don't expect Spider-Man 2, but I think this is going to be a fairly chunky success for Sony. It's made by a relatively small team. In 3 years, I've played it at Summer Games Fest. It's wonderful. 3D platform games on PlayStation aren't exactly Nintendo level performance sales wise, but this has had an audience that those games haven't had via the built-in title, which I think is probably from looking at the trophy data seems to have had a lot of players.
So I was going to ask about that, because like 3D PlayStation platforms aren't known for 3D platforms. Certainly not since you say PlayStation.
You say this. You say this. This isn't true. PlayStation have always had a 3D platform. I've always had that sort of family-friendly platform, going all the way back to Crash Bandicoot and Spyro.
This is what I'm going to say. You say PlayStation 3D platformer, I think back to the Crash Bandicoots, the Spyro the Dragons, Croc Legend of the Goblin. I know it wasn't a first-party one, but Croc Legend of the Goblin. That sort of era of platformer. Obviously, we saw PS2 was known for things like Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, like. The perception of PlayStation games has shifted more towards kind of the cinematic AAA thing. But there have been 3D platforms on there. I mean, I love the Ratchet and Clank remake and the Rift Apart. I cannot wait for another one of those. Like, have those done well on PlayStation?
So they're not Nintendo level, right? So also there's Sackboy and there's Knack and there's loads of these. PlayStation do these games quite a bit, and Astro Bot. So Ratchet and Clank did about 1 million units in its first month on PlayStation 5, which came out in 2001, so shortly after the console launched. It wasn't it was like, oh, that seems okay. It did, after over 2 years, got up to 4 million. Right? If you can think about, Mario did that in about 2 weeks, right? So, but that's okay. Right, that's an okay number. I think if you look at, if Ratchet and Clank do 4 million in 2 years, I think we're going to see Astro Bot easily do past 5 million by the end of the year. Because Astro Bot has this thing in the game where there's loads. You can find these little robots dressed up as PlayStation characters, right? So you've got Kratos and you've got Nathan Drake and all those characters from PlayStation history. So that's going to appeal. I suspect they'll lean into that quite heavily at the launch of this to try and sell to the PlayStation fans. But then when we get closer to Christmas, remember this is only September, we get close to Christmas and you start seeing Black Friday, you start seeing the promotion around that, and they're starting to target families and kids. We're getting to that point in the PlayStation's life cycle now, and Astro Bot, I suspect, might be used as a big sort of tentpole title. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at, I wouldn't be surprised if it smashes Ratchet and Clank's numbers in the first 6 months, first 3 months of this. I think, I dare say, don't expect God of War, don't expect the 20 million sellers. It's not going to trouble Mario. But there's a lot. Also, what helps, and this is it's a really quiet year for PlayStation. Like, when you look at games like Sackboy, a big adventure, we don't know how well that sold. I have to imagine it was one of the lowest selling first party exclusive games at the launch of PS5, a Sackboy game. That was launched at the same time as Spider-Man Miles Morales and Demon's Souls, and Astro Bot was free in the game. Like, I sit there thinking, we're getting out of all the games that's going to get drowned out. This year, PlayStation's lineup from first-party internal teams is almost non-existent. We've had Concord. There is Helldivers was a second. I call it second-party game. There's been some third-party titles that are quite popular, but really it's a bit of a quiet run. If you're really into your PlayStation games, this is the big one, right? Which is mad to say, but it is the big one. And I think that's going to help. It's going to give PlayStation focus on it. My estimates, I think, might even be conservative. I think I wouldn't be surprised if this really does break out and does something really cool.
I also think if you're looking at the wider Q4 lineup in terms of that family-friendly, kid-friendly hit, like I think Astro Bot by far and away could well be the biggest one. Like, I'm trying to think what else is coming out this group. It's not like there's a Mario Wonder or even Nintendo have got a few spin-offs and things and a Mario Party and stuff, but I'm looking at like specifically platformer sort of games. You've got Lego Horizon, you've got Sonic Generations remake, but Astro Bot's like the big new fun 3D platformer in town.
Yeah, I think. I think if you're a mum and a dad and you want to get something for your kids, I think you're probably still leaning towards Switch than a PlayStation or an Xbox. But yeah, I think for those that want, here's the thing though, Astro Bot's got that sort of like, I can't wait. I've downloaded, I'm ready to play this game, and because I can play it with my kids. They can watch this and they can delight at the joy of it, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's interesting one, Astro Bot, because it's so heavily relied on the technology of the DualSense controller. I'd be interested to see how well that's going to translate, if they're going to create a PC version of this, because I'm not convinced it's PC friendly as a game. But anyway, I think Star Wars Outlaws I was a bit unsure about, and I think Astro Bot is got. I think if you said to people 3-4 months ago this is going to be one of the big launches of the year, I think people would laugh at you. But now I think after the reveal, it went down very well. It was definitely the talk of the PlayStation conference. It was it didn't have much competition there. It doesn't have much competition now, and if it's as good as I played, if it lives up to the game I played and I experienced, I think it's going to get fantastic reviews. I think the fans are going to come out for it, and then I think when you get to Christmas, it will be a key family title for PlayStation. So yeah, I think this is going to be probably one of PlayStation's more successful first-party platform games that we've seen.
Hopefully it gets a tad more support than Concord as well. So
yeah, we can already see that. You can already see it.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like Concord, as you say, Concord's potentially sent out to die because they focus on making Astro Bot a big hit. So I'm high hopes for this one myself as well. Like as soon as the trailer was shown off back in May, I then introduced my son to Astro's Playroom. He has played that, he has loved it, and he is ready for the full-blown Astro Bot. So looking forward to this one. Yeah. Right, I think that is all we've got time for. Thank you so much for joining us, listeners, or viewers. I say viewers, we've got the new fancy visualizer thing, so I'm going to redo that all over again. Sorry, Alex, cut this bit. That is all we've got time for. Thank you so much for joining us. Chris, thank you again for joining me on this. I know you don't really have a choice. I force you to do it every week.
That's right. I'm a reluctant speaker. You know me. I don't like to talk. I'm really shy and reserved normally, and yet here I am forced to chat on a podcast.
It's a real torture trying to get you to say things.
Yeah, I know.
So it's the hardest part of my week. As soon as we finish recording, I'm gonna remotely deactivate the manacle that's keeping you to that chair, and we'll go. That's us for this week. Thank you so much. You can find all previous podcasts, including our Gamescom podcast. We did four shows last week. Not last week, week before. That's the joy of a week off. Four shows during the week of Gamescom, including an interview with Jason Della Rocca about the challenges facing indies. We did a great hour-long Q&A show with Des Gale from Altered Gene. So do go back and listen to those. You can find them on the podcasting platform of your choice. Just search for the GamesIndustry.biz podcast. You can get more news, insight, and analysis into the world behind video games at GamesIndustry.biz. And we will be back next week. Thank you very much.